So we have a lot of kids who are presenting with anxiety. As I go through today, I have your questions. I'm going to plan on kind of going through some of those. But if you guys have a question as I'm chatting, please just unmute yourself and chat with me. I would love for this to be a dialogue and us to be able to kind of chat. Okay. Just as far as confidentiality stuff, I won't talk about any like specific case stuff. I won't talk about any specific client things. So it'll be kind of general overall anxiety work things. So to kind of just get started, I want to tell you a little bit about how we kind of, oh, the audio is still muffled. If I move the microphone closer, does that help? Yes, no? Little tiny bit, not a ton. Okay, I also like dance while I talk, so I will try to stand still. No promises, just let me know when I need to try to talk a little bit clearer, okay? So overall anxiety, what we want to do is we want to help kids recognize anxiety is pretty natural. We all have anxiety. We kind of joke, our ancestors were the anxious ones. They're the ones that survived. They're the ones that their anxiety served them well. But we want to have a healthy level of anxiety. We want anxiety to be there to help us look both ways when we cross the street. Not, hey, I can't go there because I have to cross the street. We need it to be at a healthy level. Was that a question?
Hey, Jared, if you would, could you turn off your audio, please? Unless you have a question, and then you can go ahead and ask it. Thank you so much.
So we want kids to recognize anxiety itself is okay. A lot of times we have people come in and they say, how do I get rid of my anxiety? And that's not our goal. Our goal is to not get rid of anxiety. Our goal is to help people be able to manage their anxiety and still engage in daily life. So they come in and we teach them some coping skills. We teach them how to kind of calm. And then we help them say, what is anxiety keeping you from doing right now? And how can we help you do that? And then from there, we kind of help them kind of challenge some of those worry thoughts. Because worry oftentimes is going to say, there's this huge chance something horrible is going to happen, and there's no way you're strong enough to deal with it. And we want to teach kids, hey, I think you probably are strong enough. I really think you probably can handle that. Does that make sense? Any questions so far before I start reading into the questions on that you guys emailed in? Nope. Okay. So the first question that we got was, what are the silent signs of anxiety? So anxiety presents in a lot of different ways. There's no like, this is how anxiety presents every time. So anxiety can present like what you see as like the classical heart racing, I can't breathe. I have a lot of kids telling me very frantically, I can't breathe, I don't know what's wrong. And I'm like, well, you're screaming at me. You can breathe. You clearly have enough oxygen. But their mind is telling them they can't breathe. We have kids who get the shakes, who are really shaky. They're hot or they're cold and they're having those flashes. And so those are some of those physical symptoms that we see. We also have kids that are really internalizing. And so they're just getting very tense, or they're shutting down, or they're avoiding eye contact, or they're just not going places. So they're not going to the birthday parties. They're not asking for help. They're not doing things along those lines. Sometimes we have kids that don't even really know it's anxiety. And so they're saying, I have a headache, but their head hurts or their stomach hurts before school every day. And once they get to school or once they don't go to school, they feel pretty okay. And it's not that they're lying. They really do feel horrible. There's a lot of ties between the gastrointestinal system and anxiety, but they're not sick. They're not contagious. They don't necessarily need to stay home. And what we know is the more they stay home, the more likely their anxiety is going to continue to grow. We also can see kids who are externalizing. So sometimes a silent sign of anxiety isn't so silent. Sometimes they are very loud and they are very clear and they are screaming and yelling and throwing and they are not wanting to go there. They don't want to do this. And it's not just them throwing a fit, it's them meeting their need. Anxiety is one of those core fear responses, fight, flight, or freeze. Fight is one of them. So just because they're anxious doesn't mean it's always the quiet timid. Any questions as we keep going? Nope. All right, I'll just keep going. Does social media access seem to have an impact on the anxiety of a child? I would say there continues to be more and more research into this. We know that kids are really plugged in and really engaged in social media. And I would say that need to respond very quickly, that's a lot of pressure. Those kids were like, she left me unread for 3 minutes. You have to respond within 3 minutes or someone's mad at you. That's a lot of pressure, whether you're anxious or not. So there's some of that anxiety. There's also this anxiety that a lot of times people are presenting the best possible things on social media. And so then if I'm already stuck in worry thoughts, now I'm saying, well, my life isn't that good. I'm not doing that well. And then we start to worry. We start to have more of those second doubts. We also are seeing with TikTok some trends of people kind of glorifying anxiety. And so then people are kind of hearing a little bit more of it in a different way. And that's kind of a new trend that we're starting to see. Overall, social media is not bad. It is a great resource. It is a great opportunity to find information, to find people who you can talk to. You just have to be aware of who you're talking to and kind of fact check some of that information. If that makes sense. The next question talks about a child that doesn't show emotion easily. So maybe some autistic traits that are going on, and kind of what are some things that we can look for in that. And I would say it's going to present in about the same way. Kids who are maybe on the spectrum or something along those lines are maybe going to want a little bit more routine. And that's okay. We can provide some accommodation to that. Routine is great for kids. Kids who have no predictability are often going to feel kind of chaos and out of control. And we want to give them a little bit of predictability. But we also want to teach that some uncertainty is okay. It's okay to not know exactly what's going to happen and to, I don't know what the plan is today. Let's see what we do, and sit in that uncertainty and be able to kind of work through that in a kind of flexible manner. Kids who might be struggling with some traits on the spectrum also might have some sensory sensitivities. And those are things that we don't necessarily want to just say, hey, let's get you used to this. Some of those we want to be respectful of, and we want to say, how do we accommodate for that, right? A kid who is really overstimulated by noise, maybe it's okay for them to wear earplugs. They still need to be able to go. We still want to empower them to engage in the desired activities, but maybe we can provide some accommodation for them. Does that make sense? Okay. Feel free to jump in anytime. I want it to be as interactive as you guys want it to be. Resources for parents to help their child cope. So there are some pretty amazing apps out there. And there's been some studies on some of those apps that when people are using those apps, they can be really, really helpful. One of the problems is a lot of people are starting to use them and then they fall off and they're not really consistently in the habit of using those. But that's something that maybe you guys can try. Some of the apps are Calm, Headspace, and some of these might be ones you guys have tried. Guided Mind, Mind Shift, Smiling Mind. There's some that just teach some like mindfulness stuff. So there's like the Insight Timer. There's Stop, Breathe, and Think Kids, which can help kids. There's Super Stretch Yoga. That's one I really love. It is kids literally modeling how to do yoga stretches in a very kid-friendly way. So something, if you have kids, you might want to try that one. Those are all apps that can be really helpful. Also, modeling it's okay for me to sit in some of that uncertainty. Modeling, hey, I'm anxious, so emotion identification, and I'm still choosing to move forward. I'm anxious and I'm still going to do this. That modeling can be very helpful. Okay.
Hey, Crystal, would
Yes.
would you be able to email me those apps tomorrow? And folks, I could send those out in an email to everybody so you can take a look at them and try them if you'd like to.
Yeah, definitely. There are also some books from resources. So I got some books here. For some of the younger kids, there are these really fun kind of interactive books. So they're kind of by Imagination Press. So there's like What to Do When I Worry Too Much, which is great for just like general overall worries. I do this one with quite a few kids. It's really nice from it just helps normalize it a little bit. It helps say, we all have worries, and how do I start to boss them back a little bit? There's ones that talk about, I won't go through all of them, but like when life's not fair, for those kids who really need life to be even and equal all the time. When mistakes make us quake, for those perfectionistic kids. Bad habits. This is one for those kids who are kind of falling into more like tick or trick, which I know is a question we have lower. Those kids can really benefit from having this kind of thing. I keep getting distracted by the text, sorry. Having a book like this. When I'm too shy. When my brain gets stuck. And then when you dread your bed, for those kids who are really scared, are really having a hard time falling asleep. And again, I can put that in that email as well if y'all want it. Again, just resources that we can utilize for our different kids. Here's a question about distinguishing between ADHD and anxiety and how those two might play a role. We have a lot of kids who are going to come in with more than just anxiety. So they're going to come in and they might have anxiety and ADHD. They might have anxiety and some depression. They might have anxiety for other things. So we have to be able to kind of pick apart what's driving that behavior. What's going on and how do we help shape that behavior? Kids who are impulsive and anxious sometimes can do stuff if they don't think about it too much. But then if they have time to think about it, then anticipatory anxiety gets really scary and it's very hard for them to do it. And so how do we help them acknowledge that anxiety and still move forward? They can also be pretty impulsive in their responses. And so really helping them slow down and say, let's be mindful. Let's take a deep breath. Let's do some kind of awareness stuff and grounding techniques. I think we had a question in the chat real quick here. So the worry one be good for kids who worry about their parents' safety at work. So yeah, definitely that just overall what to do when you worry too much. That one's nice and just kind of overall generally being aware. I call it worry tomatoes with kids a lot because it talks about like feeding the worry tomatoes. So that would be a really good workbook as well.
Okay, that was mine. It's something that I've been working on. I was in the Army when she was younger, and now I'm a zookeeper and I work with dangerous animals. So she's always worrying that something's going to happen with tigers or hyenas or something like that. And we've never had any safety issues, but I'm a single parent and there's nobody else around here for her. So it's like a constant underlining thing that she has all day.
So I think it's okay to say, hey, there might be some danger to my job. And we take safety precautions and trust these safety precautions. And a lot of kids who are worried about their parents are doing what we call reassurance seeking things. So they might be like asking questions repeatedly or calling to check in. And just reminding them that those things don't really change how safe you are. Anxiety will make them think it is, but long-term, you're equally as safe whether they check in on you or not, because you managed to keep yourself alive for this long. You've probably got this, you know? So just reminding them of that, because one of the things anxiety says is, oh man, there's no way, or what if, or what if. So something else we can do.
Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, with the comorbid anxiety and ADHD, sometimes we actually see kids who their anxiety will keep their ADHD well managed because they're so anxious about messing up that they're like holding it together all day at school and they're being very careful, and then they get home and it's and they are bouncing off the walls and they are so emotionally dysregulated because they held it together for so long, and helping them be able to find that balance of how do we help you not be so anxious about making a mistake and still regulate yourself in all settings. Because once they get home, they're done and they can't handle it anymore. So that's something else we see sometimes. We have one that kind of talks about those kids who have a hard time making decisions. So this would be those kids who you say, hey, we could go out to dinner tonight. Do you want to go to McDonald's or Wendy's? And they sit in it. And they're froze. Because what if they make the wrong choice? And what if they really wanted McDonald's, but they chose Wendy's? Or what if you really wanted McDonald's and they chose Wendy's? Or what if McDonald's doesn't have the fries they want and they really just needed a Frosty? And what is the right choice? And they can't move forward. So for that, we would just want to model, man, we might make the wrong choice. How do we sit in that uncertainty and move forward? That's a big part of this, is I can be uncomfortable. I can be unsure, and I can choose to move forward. And we want to do that in slow baby steps. We don't necessarily want to be like, you have to choose it all. But we want to slowly let them learn they can make those choices. And if it's the wrong choice, that's going to be okay too. We'll figure it out. We'll try again next time. It's part of how we learn. We have one about what to do when your kid is just so upset that they're crying and they're not willing to talk to anyone. That's really hard because you're sitting there and you're watching your kid suffer and you just want to help. That is a core, once you're a parent, if your kid's uncomfortable, you want to make your kid feel better. That is immediate, that is gut, right? My kid gets hurt, I want to swoop in and save. But when they're toddlers and they fall down every time and I swoop in every time, does it typically get bigger? Well, let me tell you, when my kids were with grandma and grandpa and they fell and grandmas were like, oh, the kid cried harder than when I was like, oh, I think you're fine, right? Sometimes how the parent responds impacts how the kid responds. So validate they're upset, right? Man, that sounds like that's really hard for you. Man, this sounds like it's a hard moment. And they don't need to problem solve at that moment. They don't need to talk to you at that moment. They just need to be able to re-regulate. So when they're feeling that sad, we don't need to rise to their occasion. We need to be the calm in that situation. But we also need to validate that they're in a really hard spot. Right? Man, that sounds like that's really scary. Something's really bothering you. And just let them regulate. They can co-regulate with you. You can talk to them about what coping skill they want to use. Hey, do you want to listen to some music? Hey, do you want to do some art? And then once they're calmer, then you guys can kind of start to process. A lot of times, once I'm really, really emotional, I'm not going to be rational. The human brain, once we get really upset, we're back in our reptilian brain. Our prefrontal cortex is not online. We're not thinking clearly. We can't ask our kids to do that. We got to let them calm back down. get their brain back on board. So I guess I kind of went into this next question. So it talked about the best way to support your child without being dismissive. So when your kid is anxious, a lot of times it's something that doesn't make sense. So like the kid who is scared to cross the street. Well, I want you to be anxious enough that you look both ways, but it's safe to cross the street. You have to be able to cross the street, right? So it's easy to say, just don't worry about it. Let's just go. Just stop. Stop freaking out. What else have I heard? I don't understand why you're so upset about this. It's easy to be dismissive because worry doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always, A plus B equals 4,000, right? It doesn't always make sense. And so how do we still say, man, you're feeling really uncomfortable right now. You're feeling really unsure right now. And here's what I think we need to do. So we want to validate while still empowering. And I think together we can cross the street and be safe. And I think that I can go to work and talk to you when I get home. And I think that you can go to school and talk to your teacher. So being able to say, yes, and, right? Yes, you're uncomfortable. And I'm still empowering you to go forward. Thoughts or questions on any of that?
I have a question. Could like, if your child has anxiety and you have anxiety and you're feeling like anxious, could your child feel the same thing you're feeling and get all worried about something that they don't know what you're anxious for?
Sometimes. So kids learn how to navigate the world by looking at their parents and modeling after their parents, right? So especially really young kids, if they're kind of meeting someone new or going into a new situation, we often see them checking back in with their parents, right? We often see them, I want to go play at that park, but I'm going to check, is mom there? Okay, mom's still there. Okay, here I go. I'm going to check back in with mom. Okay, here I go, right? And as they get older, we should see that a little bit less. They should increase that independence of trusting their judgment on how to handle that stuff. But they're still pretty attuned to their parents. That's a survival thing, right? Their parents are who's going to meet their core needs. And if their parents are super, super anxious, maybe the kids don't know why. Maybe the kids don't know what's up, but they're probably feeling that a little bit, right? And what a great opportunity to say to them, hey, my anxiety is really high right now. I'm really having to practice my own coping skills. Let's try them together, right? That's a great opportunity to model this because their anxiety, they're going to have anxiety forever. We're not hoping that they get rid of anxiety by the time they're 12, right? We all have anxiety. What we're hoping is that they know how to manage that anxiety and they can identify that anxiety and they know how they want to problem solve from that anxiety. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions? So here it said, any good coping skills you could suggest? So I don't know. I feel like breathing has gotten this bad rap of like, oh, everyone says breathing, but it's not that helpful. But when you're in true anxious, like you're having an anxiety symptoms, right? And your breathing gets dysregulated. Your body gets this adrenaline rush. Your body thinks it's ready to fight a bear. And if you don't calm your system down, it's really hard to think straight. It's really hard to make that different choice. So there's a lot of value in breathing. Another value of breathing is it's not disruptive. It's probably not going to be something that you are like doing and causing problems for other people. You don't have to have anything to do it. You can do it anywhere. So breathing is one of the first ones. And there's no right or wrong way to breathe. I would say the kids who come in and say, well, I took a deep breath. Typically we need a little bit more. It's not a deep breath. It's calm breathing. So it's really making that commitment. And often we need to practice it a little bit. We need to do it when we're calm so that we can use it when we're upset. I kind of talk about like NFL players, they practice before they play a game. They're really good. They have some core skills, but they still practice. We want to practice calm breathing. So that's one. There's a lot of ones that we do that kind of like bring awareness back to what's happening now. So there's things like worry rocks. You can just have a rock and kind of keep in their pocket. There's bracelets that you can have. There's rings that they can spin. And that just, when I'm doing this, I'm bringing myself back to it. We can pair that with a coping statement. Oh, I'm really nervous, but I think I'm strong enough to handle this. Something along those lines. I also love, when it comes to bringing awareness back and doing mindfulness stuff, play I Spy. If you're playing I Spy, you're having to bring your awareness back to the situation, right? So if I'm in my head and I'm worried about what if, and I'm like, oh, I spy and I have to find something black. Now I'm a little bit more aware and I'm scanning my surroundings in a not, I'm fearful of what's going on, but what's black? What's happening here? And how can kids do that on their own? Okay, now let me find 5 black things in the room. So if we're sending them to class alone. Okay, I want you to find 5 black things in your notebook. I want you to find 5 things that have the letter B in them when you spell them out. Now we're really just bringing that brain back. We're still gonna have worry thoughts, but we're starting to kind of change some of those patterns. We're trying to kind of break that cycle of worry. There's also progressive muscle relaxation, which is really just a very fancy way of saying like you're tensing and relaxing your muscles. There's no right or wrong way to do it. I like to start from my toes and work to my nose. You just tense your feet, relax your feet. Tense your legs, relax your legs, and you work your way up your body. That one can be super helpful for kids who are struggling to fall asleep, just to get their body a little bit more relaxed. And it starts to challenge some of the thoughts. There's so many other coping skills. These are just a couple that really help kind of change the mindset and physically relax the body. Thank you for the questions. Any other questions? This one talks about like family, how to help a child who also is kind of maybe on the autistic spectrum or autism spectrum, and how to help them with their anxiety and then recognizing emotions. So, you know, there's lots of different emotion identification games out there. Sometimes there's value in like, this is what I look like when I feel this way, and like modeling that for them. And then here's a mirror. Here's what you look like when you feel that way. That can be valuable. Overall, those kids who are on the spectrum really like having a visual. So this is the plan for the day. If the plan is changing, I'm gonna let you know about that. We're still gonna have a change in plans, that still happens, but look, it's different, and I'm giving you a visual reminder. I'm giving you a little bit more time to prep for that. We're not just springing it on them quite as much. Things along those lines. This one we kind of already talked about, the fear of losing loved ones. So I would say there's a couple of different ways to look at this. With COVID, we've had the fear of losing loved ones that was really real and really valid. And we've had kids who had the fear of losing their parents when their parents were struggling with a true health concern. And at that point, we just want to be super transparent with them. We want to be honest that this is where we are, this is what we're dealing with, and here's how we would move forward if this is what happens. I think we can, if we tell kids, everything's fine. Like we said before, they get their cues from their parents, they're gonna know that's not truth. They might not know 100% what's going on, but they know. And then we've really lost a lot of like trust. well, just because my mom said it, that didn't make it truth. So then what? And that sort of thing. If it's really irrational, so like the true like worry, something's going to happen to my mom if I let her go to the grocery store, then we would want to say, you know, whatever reassurance you're doing, whatever safety behavior they're falling into, that's not really making a big difference in how safe I am. I'm safe. This is how we're moving forward. And we would slowly help them increase that distance. So we're not going to do a safety behavior before I go to the store. And I have a lot of kids now who are texting or calling their parents while they're gone to check on them. And maybe they're checking on them, but maybe it just sounds like, Mom, I wanted to say I love you, right? And we're trying to start to limit that a little bit. Like, hey, when I'm at work, I can only respond to you 3 times. Other than that, you'll have to wait until I get off work. And then maybe we're limiting it to I can only call you at lunch. And then maybe it's, I promise I'll be here after school. Like I'll talk to you after school. So we're starting to kind of pull some of those safety behaviors. And then fear of storms. Storms is a little bit hard here in Kansas because we have like a season where we have a ton of storms and we have none and the kid thinks they're completely fine. And then we have a ton of storms and they freak out and then we have none and they're fine. So it's hard to maintain that progress because we know the more we do it, the easier things get. So sometimes we'll do where we just talk about storms, we do research on storms, like tell me about storms, help me learn about storms, tell me what the clouds are. What's that? That cloud looks like a, I don't know any of this stuff. That's not my thing. That looks like a, I don't know any of their names realistically. We say, what does the weather patterns look like if there's going to be a storm? Maybe we watch false news reports. Maybe we watch YouTubes of times when there was like, you know, the crazy weather, like lightning. Maybe we eat dinner and in the background we have sounds of thunder and stuff. So different ways to kind of just normalize that across time. And again, just jump in if you have any questions. So this one talks a little bit about medication. So medication can be a really good support for those kids whose anxiety is really, really high and we're having a hard time getting over that bump, that we're just kind of stuck. And medication for anxiety, I'm not a med provider, but medication for anxiety takes a while to kind of build up in your system to kind of do all that brain work and mess with the transmitters and all that jazz. So if you're going to take it, you really have to take it consistently at the prescribed dose for 2 to 5 weeks before you're going to see any relief, right? So for kids who want to just get rid of anxiety, it feels like it's not working immediately. But it just takes some time. The hope from a medication standpoint is that we have you at a dose that brings that anxiety level down so that you can use your coping skills and learn how to manage anxiety. We don't want to just make it so you're not scared of anything. We don't want to just get rid of anxiety. That's again, not the goal, right? Once you're on anxiety medication, we do ask that you're on it long enough to really kind of get in the daily habits that you want to be in. We want to get in that daily habit of what do I want my life to look like? Am I doing what I want to be doing? So it's not a like I take it for a week and done, I take it for a week and done, right? We want to take it consistently. We want to kind of have that commitment before we get started. And there are some people who are going to take some level of anxiety medication their whole life. They are just a little bit wired. And again, I'm not a neurologist. I don't do all that stuff. I go to a few of those trainings and hear a little blurbs and then I'm like, over my head. They're just a little bit more wired to be more reactive. They're going to be the people who, when they have, there's a sort of response, are going to respond much more extremely. And they might just need that little bit of dose to give them that little bit of relief to slow those thoughts down, to slow those responses down. We see a lot that it helps them sleep because a lot of those, we see a lot of kids who are managing well during the day, but then right before bed, they get kind of where they have those racing thoughts and they're having a little bit of a hard time with that. And that's okay. It's long-term, not going to impair functioning. That's our goal. We want them to be able to do what they want to do in a way that's rewarding for them. Any thoughts or questions on that at all? Okay. This one talks about co-parenting when you don't get along, and the best way to help kids with anxiety. So I think about when I went on a trip for spring break. We went to a training in Denver, and I went on some highways that I wasn't sure what the speed limit was, right? So I didn't know what was expected of me, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So if now you're a kid and you're going home and you don't know what the rules are from home to home, we would expect their anxiety to be a little bit higher, right? So one of those things would be we need to really effectively communicate what is expected where. Now I can respect that on different roads, I need to go different speeds. When I'm in my neighborhood and there's a million kids, I really need to drive a little bit slower than I'm driving on 70, right? So the rules don't have to be the same between homes, but they do need to be clearly communicated. That will help with anxiety. And then just kind of from a co-parenting, if the parents are fighting in front of their kid, that normally is going to make a kid normally nervous. Realistically, these are the two people who they love and who are supposed to be really taking care of them. And if they're not on the same page, that can be pretty anxiety provoking. Like what's going to happen, who's right, who's wrong. And being able to communicate respectfully in front of your kids is enormously important. But then also being able to communicate, like I said, different isn't wrong. Just because there's different expectations at different places doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it different. And so we don't have to be anxious about these differences. The next question talks a little bit about anxiety before bedtime. And I kind of started to hit on this a little bit. We have a lot of kids who bedtime is a hard time for them. They get ready for bed and then they have this like of worry thoughts. And now it's what if, but what if, and oh, I messed this up, and oh my gosh, and oh, and we need to check, and we need all these worry thoughts to hit them. And you're like, it is bedtime, like you're tired. And then you're at the end of your rope, they're at the end of their rope. So there's a lot of value in setting aside time. We call it like worry time, where we say, okay, you have 10 minutes and we get to process some of your worries now. We can process as many worries as you have. We have 10 minutes, we set a timer, we set aside that time one-on-one, and we process them together. One of the values of doing this is now we're slowing down that bedtime. Because I know with kids, I feel like we cram them full of stuff and they get home late and then we say, okay, hurry, get in the bed, okay, go. Well, that's not super relaxing for me. I'm not super ready for bed if I'm rushing into bed, right? But if I take the time to slow down and I'm taking that time to worry and I'm taking the time to relax and I have a routine that I do before I get into bed and I pair that routine with a coping skill, like maybe that progressive muscle relaxation, now my body is more prepared for sleep. I've taken care of some of the thought part. I've taken care of physically relaxing my body. And I know my body knows this routine is part of sleep, right? We can find that to be very helpful. There are some kids, like I said earlier, that sometimes medication can really make a big difference for that as well. It's not what I would go to first. I definitely wouldn't jump to I need to medicate my kid to help them sleep right away. When I talk about slowing down and taking the time, think about those kids who are really having a hard time falling asleep. We're already spending quite a bit of time talking to them after it's bedtime. They're coming out a lot of times. We're fighting with them. We're already investing a lot of time in that. Might as well put that time up front and have it be positive time rather than it be fighting, contentious, more stressful time. Can everyone hear me? Okay-ish?
I hear you good.
Okay.
And I just wanted to comment, I know it's kind of quiet in here, but what you were talking about the time before bed, my kids are older now, but when they were younger with their anxiety, we did use it as, we just called it one-on-one time or talk time, and they looked forward to it. And we always set a timer, and they got 15 minutes. And if they didn't have something to talk about, usually they did, but some nights maybe they wouldn't. So we'd play like a word game or do something like that. And I found that that did decrease the amount of times they got out of their bed to ask you questions, because they got that one-on-one time, and then they fell asleep better and I fell asleep better.
And there's a lot of value in just having that time to process with your kids. Sometimes I feel like we're just running and running and running and running. And by the time we're done, I'm like, oh man, I don't really know how their day went. I don't know what they did. So even if it's not worry time, setting aside that time can be super rewarding. And attention is a humongous positive reinforcement. Definitely, I agree. This one talks about how anxiety manifests in young children, ages 3 to 6. So for these kids, a lot of times we're seeing them hiding a little bit closer to parents or their safe person. So they're not quite as adventurous. They seem to have a little bit higher startle response. They seem to probably not make as much eye contact. So they're maybe not looking at people quite as much. They're not responding in the same way. They think more things are scary, and so they're coming and showing you something scary more often. Or sometimes they're the kids that are really just like hiding in a corner. They're just super shut down. Or like I said before, we have kids who are seeing the externalizing behavior. Hey, that makes me really scared, so now I'm going to act out so that you have to come and be near me. Kids are amazingly great at meeting their needs. And if I need my mom, who's my safe person, they are really good at finding a way to do that. And it is creative, and they need that. And if we don't provide that, they will find a way to get that. So it's a lot of different ways to meet that need. This one talks a little bit about trick. So trichotillomania is where kids are like pulling their hair out. And this is under anxiety diagnosis, but it's a little bit different. And a lot of anxiety, what we see is I get anxious and then I engage in avoidance so I don't have to face that fear. So I'm scared, I don't go there. Whew, good thing I didn't do that. Otherwise something horrible was gonna happen. I'm never gonna do that again. Next time that situation pops up, they avoid. Whew, I didn't do that, good thing. And then that reinforces it, right? Trick is different in I have this urge, and it's not necessarily a bad feeling. There's nothing bad if I don't do it. There's nothing bad that's going to come. But this is very rewarding. This feeling, this sensation, this habit, this pattern. And so they get a positive, it releases positive endorphins in their body. And so then it's reinforcing in a different way. Instead of removing the bad feeling, it increases the positive feeling. So the treatment looks a little bit different, and we have to find some kind of competing responses. How do we meet that need in a different way? So that's where it's a little bit different than some of the anxiety stuff. I thought I heard a question there. The kind of along those lines, there's talking about perfectionism. Perfectionism is those kids who are like the best kid in class. They're always on top of their work. Maybe they're getting it done early. They are staying up late to get their assignments turned in. They follow every rule. They help the teacher make sure the other kids are following rules. And it is exhausting. And it's not great for friendships if I'm constantly tattling on my friends. And it's not super sustainable because we're human. We're not perfect. We're going to mess up. And some things are going to fall through the cracks. And that's going to be okay. So this one's hard because there's a lot of societal support for being a perfectionism. We really praise those kids. We advance those kids. We put them in leadership positions and helping them find that balance of, yes, you're very attentive to details. That's amazing. And it's okay if something doesn't happen. It's okay if you prioritize sleep over this project sometimes. Adjusting to change. So that fits pretty well under that perfectionistic stuff. I need to know, I'm kind of controlling. Being able to say, I don't always have to know exactly what's coming on. Now I can tell you, as an adult, if someone said, hey, hop in the car, we're going to go somewhere for a week, I would have a few questions, right? My anxiety would jump. I want some information. We need to give our kids that same respect. Change is going to happen, but we need to be able to process that with them and not to say, get on board, I'm the mom, tell me when or do what I say, if that makes sense. I have 10-ish minutes. I have quite a few questions left here. I thought I was talking fast enough. How to keep anxiety from impacting families is one that I wanted to maybe touch base on. Anxiety is very controlling, and anxiety is really stinking uncomfortable to watch your kids in it. I don't want my kids to suffer. So it's very easy for families to fall into the trap of, we're just going to accommodate. I get that that's hard. That's hard for them to do that. We're not going to ask them to do that. We're going to do it for them. We don't go there. That's too hard for them. We don't go out to eat. That makes them nervous. But long term, it's very hard to maintain. And then the kid is in control of everything. And that's a lot of pressure on a kid. So it's being able to say, I get that that's hard for you. And I'm going to go do this. And my values are that we do this as a family. And it's still having that goal-directed behavior of, this is what I want. These are things that align with my values. And I'm respectful and aware that this might be hard for you, but I can't let that stop me. And then still providing some scaffolding, some support. Because that can be really difficult, and that can be, it can be an exposure almost for the parent themselves, because they're purposely doing something that they know might be hard for their family. But it's choosing to do that because long term, it's going to help them be able to have the life that they want. I wanted to touch base a little bit on this one. How do you know when it's normal anxiety, quote unquote normal, and when it's something you should seek support for? I think I've said a couple different times, anxiety itself is healthy. We want people to be some level of anxious. It's when it's keeping them from doing something. It's when it's negatively impacting their quality of life. It's when they're saying, I really want to go to that birthday party, and when it's the last minute, they're acting out so they're in trouble and they don't get to go. Or you get there and they're like, no, I don't want to go. Or they're not letting you leave. Or they're not going and playing with their friends. They're just hiding by you. That's when it's keeping them from living life. It's those kids that really love baseball, but every time they get up there and it's their turn to bat, their anxiety flies through the roof and they're not performing the way they could perform if they had the coping skills. And we're able to kind of deal with that uncertainty of, maybe I'll get a hit or maybe I won't. Baseball is an amazing opportunity to manage anxiety because it is all about celebrating the times you are successful, and most of the times you're not. Like even professional baseball players have like only 30% success rate of hitting or something, right? Baseball is great to practice uncertainty. If a kid is not doing something that they used to be doing, That's a pretty big sign that we need to say, hey, what's going on? Sometimes kids, as they grow, their interests change, and that's totally fine. But it's when they're still interested and they're not willing to go. That's what we want to follow up on. It's when it's the girl who was scared of dogs, so she couldn't go trick-or-treating. She's missing out on a pretty big core experience. How to help when people are bottling up some of their anxiety. I don't think there's any specific like secret juice you can give them to help them open up. It's providing those opportunities. It's consistently saying, I'm here. I get that you probably don't want to, especially those angsty teens. They don't want to hang out with you. And I'm here, and here are different ways that you can express yourself. Maybe it's words. Maybe it's an art activity. Maybe it's music. Can you share your music with me? I've had a lot of parents who've had success texting their kids from the other room because you're not having that like direct eye contact part. They have some of that success driving because someone should be watching the road when you're driving. So there's a little bit less eye contact there too. So it's consistently providing those opportunities. Kids eventually, teens want to talk to their parents and they don't want to talk to their parents, but they want you there. So consistently being there and providing those opportunities, they will eventually take advantage of that. I have 5 minutes left. Any questions? I could talk about anxiety for a long time, so. Okay, I have a couple more things that I'll try to hit on, and I'll try to respect your time. I'll be done by 7:30. It says, does anxiety cause OCD? So OCD is within the anxiety kind of framework. Like with anxiety, we have kids who have this thought, oh man, I'm really scared the dog is gonna bite me. I'm gonna get away from the dog. Good thing I ran away from the dog. Whew, good thing I didn't get eaten. And then that's reinforcing. OCD, instead of the, oh, I ran away, it's, oh, I did this to stay safe. So I was scared the dog was gonna bite me. I knocked on the thing 3 times. Oh, good thing I did that. Otherwise the dog was gonna turn on me. Now I'm safe. Oh, this is one that's been kind of flying high recently. Maybe I'm contaminated. Maybe I have germs on me. I better wash my hands, right? And we can all understand why that's high right now, right? But those kids who are washing their hands so much that their hands are raw and bleeding, that's very reinforcing. I feel scared that I'm gonna be sick. I'm gonna wash my hands. And now I feel better. But oh no, what if? So I wash my hands and I feel better. And that is it's very quick how fast those habits can form because it releases a lot of positive feelings inside. Kind of like that trick. And so we have to start to say, I have that thought, identify that thought. How do I withstand that urge? How do I sit in that discomfort? And how do I test out maybe something bad's going to happen? And I have to sit in that uncertainty. I think I'll probably stop there. So I'm not just talking up to the very last minute.
Okay. Anybody else have a last minute? Who gets to be the last one? If anyone has a question for Crystal, that's terrific. Go ahead and jump in. We'll let the silence get good and awkward here.
I sit in awkward all the time.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Crystal, thank you first and foremost, everyone, for joining us tonight. Crystal just gave us a ton of really great information. Thank you so much. And thank you. Again, we're going to get the some of the apps in an email tomorrow or Monday. I'll get those out to you. Crystal, if you would send those to me. And maybe include some of the name of the book series that you held up too, because I didn't even know those were a thing, and those are terrific. So thank you everyone for joining us. Crystal, thank you very much. Again, if you want to watch this presentation one more time, or if you have a friend who wants to watch it, please let them know that it's going to be on our website under parenting resources. so they can go, and you'll see a big blue box that says parenting resources. I'll get that posted tomorrow, probably before noon. Our topic next month is going to be all about mourning and grief. Karen Smothers, our clinical director, is going to present that. She's a wonderful presenter, and this is a very sensitive subject. And we know, unfortunately, in the last few years, a lot of kids have had to deal with that very subject, maybe more than they should. So keep an eye on our Facebook page, facebook.com/FSGC Topeka. Again, Crystal, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us. Take care, and we will see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you all. There were great questions today.